Welcome back to Shocking Stories, where we dive into the most chilling true crime cases that will leave you questioning whether luck is really a blessing or a curse. I'm your host, and today we're heading to the heartland of America, Springfield, Illinois, where one man's impossible dream became his family's worst nightmare. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear will make you think twice about ever buying another lottery ticket. This is the story of Danny Kowalski, a 42-year-old construction worker whose life changed forever on March 15, 2023, when he bought a Powerball ticket that would make him one of the richest men in Illinois. But Danny's $100 million jackpot came with a price that no amount of money could pay: the systematic disappearance of everyone he loved one by one, until he was left alone with nothing but his wealth and the terrifying question: was his family the victim of an ancient curse or something far more sinister? Picture this. It's a typical Tuesday evening in Springfield, Illinois. Danny Kowalski, a burly man with calloused hands and a warm smile, stops at Murphy's Corner store on his way home from another grueling day pouring concrete for a new shopping center. Danny had worked construction for over 20 years, ever since dropping out of high school to help support his family after his father's death. His life was simple but fulfilling: a loving wife, 3 beautiful children, and steady work that paid the bills, even if it never quite stretched far enough for luxuries. Danny was the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back, recalled store owner Patrick Murphy, who had known Danny for over a decade. He came in every Tuesday and Friday, always bought the same thing: a Mountain Dew, a bag of peanuts, and $5 worth of Powerball tickets. He joked that someday those tickets were going to buy him a mansion, but I don't think he ever really believed it would happen. But on this particular Tuesday, Danny's routine purchase would change everything. As he selected his numbers, a combination of family birthdays and anniversaries that he'd been playing for years, Danny had no idea that he was holding a ticket worth $127 million. The drawing was that night, but like always, Danny tucked the ticket into his wallet and forgot about it until the next morning. The Kowalski family lived in a modest 2-story house on Elm Street, a quiet neighborhood where children played in front yards and neighbors still waved to each other from their porches. Danny's wife, Maria, was a school nurse who had put her dreams of becoming a doctor on hold to raise their children. Their oldest, Jessica, was 19 and studying nursing at the University of Illinois. Michael, 16, was the star quarterback of his high school football team, with college scouts already showing interest. And little Emma, just 8 years old, was the light of Danny's life, a precocious girl who loved to draw and dreamed of becoming an artist. "We were happy," Maria later told investigators, her voice breaking as she remembered those final normal moments. "We didn't have much money, but we had everything that mattered. Danny worked hard. I took care of our home and children, and we were planning for the future." Jessica was going to be the first in our family to graduate college. Michael had a real shot at a football scholarship, and Emma was going to do something special with her art. We had dreams. Those dreams seemed within reach when Danny checked his lottery numbers on Wednesday morning. At first, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He checked the numbers again, then a third time, before rushing downstairs to show Maria the ticket. "Maria thought I was having a heart attack," Danny later recalled during police interviews. "I was shaking so bad I could barely speak. When I finally got the words out, that we'd won, that we were millionaires, she didn't believe me. She made me check the numbers 5 more times before she'd even consider that it might be real." The Kowalski family's life changed instantly. After taxes, Danny's jackpot was worth approximately $75 million, more money than any of them had ever imagined possessing. The local media descended on their quiet neighborhood, and suddenly, the humble construction worker and his family were the most famous people in Springfield. "It was like a fairy tale," Jessica told her college friends during one of her last phone calls home. "Dad kept saying we could do anything now. I could go to medical school without worrying about student loans. Michael could focus on football without Dad having to work overtime to pay for his equipment, and Emma could take all the art classes she wanted. We were going to travel. maybe buy a house with a pool. Dad even talked about starting his own construction company so he could be his own boss. But fairy tales, as the Kowalski family would soon learn, don't always have happy endings. The first sign that something was wrong came just 2 weeks after Danny claimed his prize. The family had been dealing with the usual challenges that come with sudden wealth. Distant relatives suddenly becoming very friendly, financial advisors appearing from nowhere with investment schemes, and reporters still calling at all hours. But they were handling it well, making sensible plans, and trying to maintain their normal routines despite their changed circumstances. That's why Maria was so surprised when Jessica didn't come home from college for her scheduled visit on Friday, March 31st. Jessica was the responsible one in the family, the type of person who called if she was going to be even 5 minutes late. When she didn't answer her phone that evening, Maria assumed there had been some kind of emergency or car trouble. Jessica always called, Maria explained to Springfield Police Detective Robert Chen when she filed the missing person report the next morning. Even when she was busy with school, she called every day to check in. When her phone went straight to voicemail all night, I knew something was wrong. The initial police investigation treated Jessica's disappearance as a typical missing college student case. Detective Chen, a 15-year veteran with experience in missing persons cases, assumed that Jessica had probably gone somewhere with friends and forgotten to check in with her parents. It happened all the time, especially with students who were dealing with the stress and excitement of their family's sudden wealth. At first, I thought we were dealing with a young woman who had maybe decided to take a spontaneous trip or gotten caught up in the party scene, Detective Chen later admitted. The family had just won the lottery. They were dealing with a lot of attention and pressure. It seemed plausible that Jessica might have needed some space to process everything. But when Jessica's car was found abandoned in a parking lot near the university campus, with her purse, phone, and keys still inside, the investigation took on a much more serious tone. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses who had seen anything suspicious, and no indication of where Jessica might have gone or why she would have left her belongings behind. That's when we knew we were dealing with something more than a college student who had decided to take an unscheduled vacation, Detective Chen explained. Jessica's car was locked, her belongings were undisturbed, but she was nowhere to be found. It was like she had simply vanished into thin air. The search for Jessica intensified over the next week, with police interviews, search parties, and media appeals for information. The Kowalski family was devastated, spending every waking moment hoping for news and fearing the worst. Danny hired private investigators and offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to Jessica's safe return. But just as the investigation was gaining momentum, the Kowalski family was hit with another devastating blow. On April 8th, exactly 1 week after Jessica's disappearance, Michael failed to come home from football practice. I waited at the school until almost midnight, Maria told investigators, her voice hollow with grief and fear. The coach said Michael had left practice at the usual time, around 6 p.m. His car was still in the student parking lot, but he was gone. Just like Jessica, there one moment, gone the next. Michael's disappearance followed the same eerie pattern as his sister's. His car was found locked and undisturbed, with his football gear, wallet, and phone still inside. Security cameras at the school showed Michael walking to his car after practice, but the cameras didn't cover the parking lot itself, so there was no footage of what happened next. 2 children from the same family disappearing within a week of each other. That's not coincidence, Detective Chen realized. Either we were dealing with the worst luck in the world, or someone was specifically targeting the Kowalski family. What do you think was happening to the Kowalski family? Was someone targeting them because of their lottery win, or was something even more sinister at play? Drop your theories in the comments below, because what happened next would test everything investigators thought they knew about missing persons cases. The disappearance of 2 children from the same wealthy family triggered a massive law enforcement response. The FBI was called in to assist with the investigation, and Special Agent Sarah Martinez, who specialized in kidnapping cases involving wealthy families, took over as lead investigator. When you have multiple family members disappearing in rapid succession after a major lottery win, you have to consider all possibilities, Agent Martinez explained to the assembled task force. This could be organized crime targeting a wealthy family for ransom, it could be someone with a personal grudge against the Kowalskis, or it could be something we haven't encountered before. The investigation revealed that the Kowalski family had been receiving dozens of threatening letters and phone calls since their lottery win became public. Most were typical examples of what wealthy people often face: demands for money, threats if they didn't share their wealth, and general expressions of jealousy and resentment. But a few of the messages were different, more specific, and more disturbing. Some of the letters talked about the curse of unearned wealth and warned that the family would pay a price for their good fortune, Agent Martinez revealed. The writers seemed to believe that the Kowalskis didn't deserve their money and that some kind of supernatural justice would be served. At first, we dismissed these as the work of cranks and religious extremists, but the timing was too coincidental to ignore. One letter in particular caught the attention of investigators. It had arrived just 2 days before Jessica's disappearance and was more detailed and threatening than the others. Written in carefully printed block letters, it read, "Danny Kowalski, you have been blessed with wealth you did not earn and do not deserve. Your family will pay the price for your greed, one by one, until you understand that some gifts come with a cost that cannot be measured in dollars. The curse has already begun." The letter was postmarked locally, which meant whoever sent it was here in Springfield, Agent Martinez noted. But there were no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that could help us identify the sender. It was clear that whoever was behind this was smart and careful. As investigators worked around the clock to find Jessica and Michael, the Kowalski family was falling apart. Danny blamed himself for buying the lottery ticket, convinced that his desire for wealth had somehow brought danger to his children. Maria barely slept, spending her nights staring at the phone and hoping for word from the kidnappers. A ransom demand, proof of life, anything that might indicate her children were still alive. Danny kept saying he would give all the money back if it would bring Jessica and Michael home, Maria recalled. He offered rewards, he went on television, he begged whoever had taken our children to contact us. But there was nothing, no demands, no threats, no communication at all. It was like our children had just disappeared from the world. 8-year-old Emma, the youngest Kowalski child, was struggling to understand what had happened to her older siblings. She had nightmares every night and refused to leave her parents' side during the day, terrified that she would be next to vanish. Emma kept asking when Jessica and Michael were coming home, Maria said through tears. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that her brother and sister might never come home? How do you tell a child that sometimes bad things happen to good people for no reason at all? The answer to that question would come sooner than anyone expected, and in the most devastating way possible. On April 15th, exactly 1 week after Michael's disappearance and 2 weeks after Jessica had vanished, Maria Kowalski was running errands in downtown Springfield when she stopped at the same corner store where Danny had bought his winning lottery ticket. She was picking up groceries and trying to maintain some sense of normalcy while the investigation continued. Store owner Patrick Murphy later told police that Maria seemed tired and distracted, but otherwise normal when she came in that afternoon. She bought milk, bread, and a few other basics, chatted briefly about the investigation, and left the store around 3 p.m. But Maria never made it to her car. Security cameras from the store showed Maria exiting through the front door, but the parking lot cameras had been vandalized earlier that week and weren't working. When Danny came looking for his wife after she failed to return home by dinner time, he found her car in the parking lot with the groceries still in the trunk and her purse sitting on the front seat. 3 family members, 3 weeks, same pattern every time, Detective Chen observed grimly. Someone was systematically taking the Kowalski family members, and they were getting bolder with each abduction. Taking Maria in broad daylight from a busy parking lot suggested that whoever was doing this was either very confident or very desperate. Danny Kowalski was now left alone with his 8-year-old daughter, a fortune that felt more like a curse with each passing day. and the growing certainty that someone was hunting his family for reasons he couldn't understand. "I would have given every penny back," Danny told investigators during one of his many interviews. "I would have burned the lottery ticket if I could go back in time. Money means nothing when your family is gone. I won the lottery, but I lost everything that mattered." But the worst was yet to come. As investigators worked desperately to find the missing family members and identify their abductor, they were about to discover that the disappearances were just the beginning of a plot so twisted and calculated that it would challenge everything they thought they knew about greed, family, and the price of sudden wealth. Like this video if you're as shocked by these disappearances as I am, and let me know in the comments whether you think this is about money, revenge, or something supernatural. Don't forget to subscribe because in part 2, we're going to reveal the shocking truth about who was really behind the Kowalski family disappearances and why the answer was closer to home than anyone could have imagined. Welcome back to Shocking Stories. When we left off, 3 members of the Kowalski family had mysteriously disappeared in the weeks following Danny's $100 million lottery win, leaving him alone with his 8-year-old daughter Emma and a growing fear that his good fortune had somehow cursed his family. But what FBI investigators were about to discover would prove that the real curse wasn't supernatural. It was human greed in its most twisted and betraying form. The investigation into the Kowalski family disappearances had become the highest priority case for both local police and federal agents. With 3 family members missing and no ransom demands or contact from the abductors, investigators were working under the assumption that time was running out to find Jessica, Michael, and Maria alive. "We had every available agent working on this case," Special Agent Sarah Martinez recalled. "The pattern was clear. Someone was systematically targeting the Kowalski family, and we had to assume that Danny and Emma would be next if we didn't catch the perpetrator quickly." The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source: financial records. FBI forensic accountants analyzing Danny's lottery winnings and bank transactions discovered something that immediately raised red flags. Despite Danny's claims that he had been conservative with his newfound wealth, there were several large cash withdrawals and wire transfers that he couldn't adequately explain. Danny told us he had been careful with the money, that he was taking advice from financial professionals and being responsible, Agent Martinez explained. But the bank records showed a different story. Someone had been moving large amounts of cash out of his accounts, and the timing of these transactions corresponded exactly with the disappearances. When confronted with the financial evidence, Danny initially claimed that he had no knowledge of the transactions. He suggested that perhaps Maria had made the withdrawals without telling him, or that there had been some kind of banking error. But as investigators pressed him for details, his story began to fall apart. Danny's behavior during the financial interviews was completely different from his demeanor when we discussed his missing family, Agent Martinez observed. When talking about Jessica, Michael, and Maria, he was emotional, desperate, heartbroken. But when we asked about the money, he became evasive and defensive. That's when we knew there was more to this story. The investigation took a dramatic turn when agents decided to conduct a more thorough search of the Kowalski home. Previous searches had focused on finding clues about the family's disappearance, but this time, investigators were looking for evidence of financial crimes and possible involvement by Danny himself. Hidden in Danny's basement workshop, agents found something that changed everything about the case. Detailed plans and photographs that suggested the disappearances had been carefully planned and orchestrated. The materials included maps of the locations where each family member had vanished, surveillance photos of their daily routines, and most damning of all, a handwritten timeline that outlined exactly when and how each family member would be eliminated. Finding those materials was like discovering a serial killer's murder kit, Agent Martinez said. But this wasn't the work of a stranger stalking the family. This was someone with intimate knowledge of their lives, their schedules, their habits, someone who had access to their home and their trust. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Hidden behind a false wall in Danny's workshop was a soundproofed room that had clearly been used to hold prisoners. The room contained restraints, surveillance equipment, and evidence of recent occupation. DNA samples that would later be matched to Jessica, Michael, and Maria Kowalski. Danny had been holding his own family captive in his basement, Agent Martinez revealed. The disappearances weren't random abductions. They were staged events designed to cover up the fact that Danny was systematically murdering his own wife and children. When confronted with the physical evidence, Danny's facade finally crumbled. In a chilling confession that would be played in courtrooms and analyzed by criminal psychologists for years to come, Danny admitted that he had been planning to kill his family for months before winning the lottery. The jackpot had simply provided him with the resources and motivation to carry out his plan. "I never loved them," Danny told investigators with shocking coldness. "I married Maria because I needed someone to take care of the house and give me children, but I never felt anything for her or the kids. They were just obligations, burdens. When I won the lottery, I realized I finally had enough money to start over, to have the life I really wanted. But I couldn't just leave them. They would have taken half of everything. So I decided to eliminate the problem permanently." The confession revealed a level of premeditation and callousness that stunned even experienced investigators. Danny had spent months researching methods of murder and disposal, studying missing persons cases to understand how to stage disappearances that would fool law enforcement. He had even practiced his grieving husband and father act, rehearsing the emotional responses he knew investigators would expect to see. Danny was a sociopath who had been hiding his true nature for over 20 years, explained FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Michael Torres, who evaluated Danny after his arrest. He was capable of mimicking normal human emotions and relationships, but he felt nothing genuine for his family. They were simply obstacles to the life he wanted to live. But the most disturbing aspect of Danny's plan was still to come. The confession revealed that Jessica, Michael, and Maria hadn't been killed immediately after being abducted. Instead, Danny had kept them alive in his basement prison for days, forcing them to participate in staged video calls and messages that would explain their absence and throw off suspicion. Danny made Jessica call her college friends to say she was taking a break from school to deal with family stress, Agent Martinez revealed. He forced Michael to send text messages saying he was going on a recruiting trip with a college scout, and he made Maria record voicemails for relatives explaining that the family was taking some time away from the media attention. He was using his victims to help cover up their own murders. The recordings of these forced messages, found on Danny's computer, provided chilling evidence of his victims' final days. In the background of the calls, investigators could hear Jessica crying and pleading with her father to let them go. Michael's voice shook with terror as he read from scripts Danny had written, and Maria, in her final recorded message, could be heard whispering, "I love you," to Emma, a mother's last words to the daughter she would never see again. Listening to those recordings was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do as an investigator, Agent Martinez admitted. To hear the fear and desperation in their voices, to know that they were being tortured by someone who was supposed to love and protect them, it was heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. But the investigation revealed an even more horrific truth. Danny's plan wasn't finished. Hidden among his papers, agents found detailed plans for the murder of 8-year-old Emma, his own daughter, and the last remaining obstacle to his new life of freedom and wealth. The plan called for Emma to disappear during a family vacation that Danny was planning to take her on, a trip that would have been their last together. Danny had already booked tickets to a remote cabin in the mountains, purchased supplies for disposing of a small body, and drafted a story about how Emma had tragically fallen into a river while they were hiking. Danny was going to kill his own 8-year-old daughter and make it look like an accident, Agent Martinez said, her voice filled with disgust. He had planned every detail, from the fake emergency call to the crocodile tears he would shed for the cameras. Emma was just days away from becoming his final victim. The arrest of Danny Kowalski sent shockwaves through Springfield and the broader true crime community. Here was a man who had appeared to be a loving husband and father, who had wept on television and begged for his family's safe return, but who was actually the architect of their destruction. Danny fooled everyone: his neighbors, his co-workers, the police, the media, even his own extended family, Detective Chen reflected. He was such a convincing actor that even when we found evidence of his involvement, part of me still wondered if we had made a mistake. Sociopaths can be incredibly manipulative, but Danny was in a class by himself. The discovery of Danny's crimes led to the grim task of locating his victims' bodies. Under pressure from investigators and facing overwhelming evidence, Danny finally revealed where he had disposed of Jessica, Michael, and Maria. The bodies were found buried on construction sites where Danny had worked, hidden beneath tons of concrete and steel in foundations that would have kept them hidden forever if he hadn't confessed. Danny used his construction knowledge to create perfect hiding places, Agent Martinez explained. He buried his family in foundations that were about to be covered by buildings, roads, and parking lots. If he hadn't been caught, their bodies would have been lost forever, sealed beneath the infrastructure of Springfield. The recovery of the bodies provided final confirmation of Danny's guilt, but it also revealed the full extent of his cruelty. Jessica had been shot in the head execution style after days of captivity. Michael had been strangled, his body showing signs of torture. Maria had been beaten to death, her injuries suggesting that she had fought desperately to defend herself and her children. The autopsies showed that Danny didn't just kill his family, he tormented them. Dr. Patricia Wilson, the medical examiner, testified during Danny's trial. These were not quick, merciful deaths. Danny took pleasure in their suffering, in their terror, in their final moments of despair. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the case was what investigators learned about Danny's future plans. His computer contained detailed research on how to assume new identities, how to establish residency in countries without extradition treaties, and how to invest large sums of money without attracting government attention. Danny was planning to disappear completely once he had eliminated his family, Agent Martinez revealed. He had already begun creating a new identity, complete with fake documents and a backstory. He was going to become someone else entirely, living off his lottery winnings in some tropical paradise while his family rotted in concrete graves. The plan was so detailed and sophisticated that investigators realized Danny had been plotting it for much longer than anyone had initially suspected. Financial records showed that he had been secretly preparing for this new life for over a year before winning the lottery, using money from his construction business to fund his research and preparations. The lottery win didn't create a monster, Dr. Torres observed. It just gave an existing monster the resources to act on his fantasies. Danny had probably been thinking about killing his family for years, but he never had the money to disappear afterward. The $100 million gave him the freedom to finally do what he had always wanted to do. As investigators continued to unravel the full scope of Danny's crimes, they made another disturbing discovery. Danny had been in contact with other individuals who were planning similar crimes against their own families. Online communications found on his computer revealed a network of people who fantasized about eliminating their relatives and starting new lives with stolen money or insurance payouts. Danny wasn't just a lone wolf, Agent Martinez revealed. He was part of an online community of people who shared strategies for family annihilation and identity change. We're still investigating the other members of this network, but it's clear that Danny's case is part of a larger pattern of domestic terrorism that we're only beginning to understand. The revelation that family annihilation was being discussed and planned in online forums led to a broader federal investigation that continues to this day. Several other suspicious deaths and disappearances are now being re-examined in light of what investigators learned from Danny's case. As part 2 of our investigation concludes, Danny Kowalski sits in a maximum security prison awaiting trial for the murders of his wife and 2 of his children. His youngest daughter, Emma, is in protective custody with relatives who are struggling to understand how the man they thought they knew could have committed such unspeakable crimes. But the case raises disturbing questions about how well we really know the people closest to us, and whether the sudden acquisition of wealth reveals hidden aspects of human nature that might otherwise remain dormant. Danny's lottery ticket may have made him rich, but it also exposed him as one of the most cold-blooded killers in Illinois history. In Part 3, we'll explore Danny's trial, the impact on little Emma and the surviving family members, and the broader implications of a case that has changed how law enforcement investigates missing persons cases involving suddenly wealthy families. Don't forget to like this video if you're shocked by these revelations, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the conclusion of this incredible story. The final twist will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family, loyalty, and the true cost of sudden wealth. Welcome back to the shocking conclusion of our investigation into the Danny Kowalski case. When we left off, the construction worker who had won $100 million in the lottery had been exposed as the cold-blooded killer of his own family, a man who had used his newfound wealth to fund an elaborate plan to eliminate his wife and children and start a new life. But what happened next would reveal even more disturbing truths about the case and raise questions that continue to haunt investigators and the surviving family members today. The trial of Danny Kowalski began on October 15, 2023, 7 months after his arrest and the discovery of his family's bodies. The case had attracted national media attention, not just because of the lottery connection, but because it represented a new and terrifying category of family annihilation, one motivated not by sudden rage or mental breakdown, but by cold, calculated greed. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh faced the challenging task of convincing a jury that a man who had appeared so loving and desperate on television was actually a remorseless killer who had planned his family's murders for months. The evidence was overwhelming, but Walsh knew that some jurors might struggle to believe that anyone could be so calculating and cruel toward their own children. This case challenged every assumption people have about family relationships and parental love, Walsh explained during her opening statement. Danny Kowalski didn't kill his family in a moment of passion or mental illness. He planned their deaths methodically, executed those plans with precision, and then played the role of grieving husband and father while their bodies decomposed in concrete graves he had prepared for them. The prosecution's case was built around the physical evidence found at Danny's home, his detailed confession, and the forensic evidence from the burial sites. But perhaps the most powerful evidence came from the recordings Danny had forced his victims to make before killing them, audio and video files that allowed the jury to hear Jessica, Michael, and Maria's final words. Playing those recordings in court was one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make as a prosecutor, Walsh admitted. But the jury needed to understand the full scope of Danny's cruelty. They needed to hear the terror in his victims' voices and see the calculated nature of his deception. The defense team, led by attorney Michael Stevens, faced an almost impossible task. With Danny's confession and the overwhelming physical evidence, they couldn't argue innocence. Instead, they attempted to portray Danny as a man who had suffered a complete mental breakdown after winning the lottery, claiming that the sudden wealth had triggered a psychotic episode that had made him incapable of rational thought. "My client was not mentally competent when he committed these crimes," Stevens argued. The shock of winning such a massive amount of money, combined with the media attention and pressure from people demanding money, caused a complete psychological collapse. Danny Kowalski, the loving father, ceased to exist, replaced by someone who was incapable of rational thought or moral reasoning. But the prosecution's psychiatric expert, Dr. Sarah Chen, testified that Danny showed no signs of mental illness or psychological breakdown. His planning was too detailed, his execution too precise, and his ability to maintain his deception too sophisticated for someone experiencing a psychotic episode. Danny Kowalski knew exactly what he was doing every step of the way, Dr. Chen testified. He made rational decisions, executed complex plans, and showed clear awareness of right and wrong by attempting to cover up his crimes. This wasn't the behavior of someone experiencing a mental breakdown. This was the behavior of a calculated killer who simply didn't care about his victims. One of the most dramatic moments of the trial came when 8-year-old Emma Kowalski was called to testify via closed-circuit television from a child-friendly interview room. Now 9 years old and living with her maternal grandparents, Emma had been receiving intensive therapy to help her process the trauma of losing her entire family and learning that her father was responsible for their deaths. Emma's testimony was heartbreaking but crucial to the prosecution's case. Through her child psychologist, Dr. Lisa Martinez, Emma described how her father's behavior had changed in the weeks before her family members began disappearing. She recalled him spending long hours in the basement, hearing strange noises at night, and her father's increasingly cold and distant behavior toward her mother and siblings. Emma told us that her daddy had become scary in the weeks before Mommy and Jessica and Michael went away, Dr. Martinez testified, speaking on Emma's behalf. She said he would stare at them during dinner with mean eyes and that he had told her mommy that things were going to change soon. For a child that age to notice such subtle changes in behavior suggests that Danny's mask was beginning to slip even before he acted on his plans. But Emma's testimony also revealed something that investigators had not previously known. Danny had been preparing Emma for the loss of her family members, gradually conditioning her to accept their absence and depend solely on him. He had told her that Jessica might not come home from college, that Michael might go away to play football, and that Mommy might need to go to the hospital for a long time. Danny was grooming Emma to be his accomplice in covering up the murders, Dr. Martinez explained. He was training her to accept explanations for her family's absence and to trust only him for information about what had happened. If he hadn't been caught, Emma would have become his unwitting collaborator in maintaining the deception. The trial also revealed disturbing details about the online community Danny had been part of, a network of individuals who fantasized about eliminating their families and starting new lives. FBI agent Sarah Martinez testified about the investigation into this network, which had led to arrests in several other states. Danny was part of a group that called themselves Reset Americans, Agent Martinez testified. They believed that most people's lives were ruined by family obligations and financial responsibilities, and they shared strategies for eliminating these burdens and starting over with new identities and stolen money. Danny's case was particularly valuable to the group because he had the financial resources to actually carry out their shared fantasies. The investigation into the Reset Americans network had uncovered at least 12 other cases where family members had died under suspicious circumstances, with the surviving spouse or parent coming into sudden wealth shortly afterward. Several of these cases were being reinvestigated as potential murders based on what investigators had learned from Danny's methods. Danny's case opened our eyes to a pattern of crimes that we had been treating as separate incidents, Agent Martinez continued. We now believe that family annihilation for financial gain is much more common than we previously realized, and that there are organized networks helping people plan and execute these crimes. The prosecution also presented evidence about Danny's plans for Emma, including the fake vacation he had been planning to take her on, a trip that would have ended with her death and his complete freedom. The detailed plans found in his computer showed a level of premeditation that shocked even experienced investigators. Danny had planned to throw Emma off a cliff during a hiking trip, then report it as an accident, Walsh revealed during her closing argument. He had researched the location, practiced his story, and even planned the timing so that her body would be found quickly enough to prevent an extensive investigation. Emma was just days away from becoming his final victim. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with their verdict: guilty on all counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The speed of their decision reflected the overwhelming evidence and the horrific nature of Danny's crimes. During the sentencing phase, several family members gave victim impact statements that brought the courtroom to tears. Maria's sister, Carmen Rodriguez, spoke about the children's final Christmas together and how Jessica had been excited about her nursing studies, Michael had been looking forward to football season, and Emma had been working on a painting for Mother's Day that she would never be able to finish. Danny didn't just kill 3 people, Carmen said, looking directly at Danny as she spoke. He destroyed an entire family, shattered a community's sense of safety, and traumatized a little girl who will never understand why her daddy chose money over love. The lottery ticket may have been worth $100 million, but the lives he took were priceless. Judge Patricia Morrison sentenced Danny to death, calling his crimes among the most heinous and calculated acts of evil she had encountered in 20 years on the bench. She noted that Danny had shown no remorse throughout the trial and had even been caught smiling during some of the testimony about his victim's suffering. Mr. Kowalski, you have proven yourself to be incapable of the basic human emotions that make civilized society possible, Judge Morrison said during sentencing. You traded the lives of your wife and children for money, and you did so with a level of planning and cruelty that defies comprehension. The death penalty is the only appropriate punishment for crimes of this magnitude. But even with Danny on death row, the case's impact continued to reverberate through the community and the broader true crime world. The revelation that lottery winners and other suddenly wealthy individuals might be targeted by their own family members led to new protocols for financial institutions and lottery commissions. The Danny Kowalski case changed how we think about sudden wealth and family dynamics, explained Dr. Patricia Moore, a criminologist who has studied family annihilation cases. We now know that large financial windfalls can trigger pre-existing homicidal fantasies and that some people view their families as obstacles to wealth rather than people to share it with. Emma Kowalski, now 10 years old, continues to live with her maternal grandparents and receives ongoing therapy to help her process her trauma. The lottery money remains in a trust fund that will provide for her education and care, but she has expressed no interest in the wealth that cost her family their lives. Emma is remarkably resilient, said her therapist, Dr. Lisa Martinez. She understands that her father did terrible things, but she still struggles with conflicted feelings about him. Part of her remembers the man who used to read her bedtime stories and help her with her art projects, while another part of her knows that same man killed her mother and siblings. It's a trauma that will take years to fully heal. The case also led to changes in how law enforcement investigates missing persons cases involving wealthy families. The assumption that random kidnappers are targeting lottery winners has been replaced by a recognition that the greatest threat often comes from within the family itself. We now look at family members as potential suspects much earlier in the investigation, Detective Chen explained. The Danny Kowalski case taught us that sudden wealth can reveal the worst aspects of human nature, and that some people are capable of unimaginable evil when money is involved. The broader investigation into the Reset Americans network continues, with federal agents working to identify other members and investigate suspicious deaths that may be connected to the group. Several cases that were previously classified as accidents or suicides are being reopened based on what investigators learned from Danny's methods. Danny's case was just the tip of the iceberg, Agent Martinez revealed. We're now investigating a pattern of family annihilation cases across the country that show similar planning and methodology. The network Danny was part of may have been responsible for dozens of deaths over the past decade. As our investigation into the Danny Kowalski case concludes, we're left with disturbing questions about the nature of family bonds, the corrupting influence of sudden wealth, and the capacity for evil that exists within seemingly ordinary people. Danny's lottery ticket may have been worth $100 million, but the cost of his greed was the destruction of everything that should have mattered most to him. The saddest part of this case is that Danny had everything: a loving family, enough money to make all their dreams come true, and the opportunity to create a legacy of love and generosity, reflected prosecutor Jennifer Walsh. Instead, he chose to destroy it all for the sake of money he didn't even need. He won the lottery, but he lost his humanity. Emma Kowalski will inherit her father's lottery winnings when she turns 18, but she has already told her grandparents that she plans to donate most of the money to charity. She wants to use her father's blood money to help other children who have lost their families to violence, turning a symbol of greed and evil into a force for healing and hope. Emma understands that money can't bring back her family, but it can help other people, said her grandmother, Carmen Rodriguez. She's going to use Danny's lottery winnings to make sure that other children don't suffer the way she has. In the end, maybe that's the only way to find something good in this terrible tragedy. If this case has affected you as much as it has affected us, please like this video and share it to help raise awareness about the warning signs of domestic violence and the dangers that can lurk within families. Subscribe to Shocking Stories for more investigations that expose the hidden darkness in our society, and remember that the people closest to us can sometimes be the most dangerous of all. The Danny Kowalski case reminds us that the real curse wasn't the lottery ticket, it was the evil that already existed in a man's heart, waiting for the right opportunity to emerge. His family paid the ultimate price for his greed, but their memory lives on as a warning about the true cost of putting money before love.